We'll get started in 1 second. I'll put on some music. Sorry about that. I had some technical issues. Apologies. Thanks for being patient. Great. Thanks for joining. I wish I could. See more videos, but I guess I'll just refer to the chat. I'm just going to let a couple people know. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. All right, we'll get started soon. All right. Are you still there, Mac? Awesome. So yeah, we'll kick things off pretty soon here. Thank you so much for joining and taking the time. I'm going to, sorry again for the technical issues. I'm going to iron that out next time. That was my first time doing a live event for LinkedIn and realized it did not work at all. But the important part is going over some of these concepts to start, and then we can get into some questions. Before kicking things off, are there any particular things that would be good to cover or questions that are top of mind for you? And you can just text in the chat and any responses, and I'll try to incorporate as much as possible. All right, so today I want to cover first, just go over some what I call foundational concepts when it comes to looking for a job, some kind of key things to consider that I think are really important in the job search. Now, I understand you might be coming from a lot of different positions. Maybe you have been laid off, maybe you currently have a job and are interested in making a transition to another career, or maybe you're simply just curious about the career process. Either way, there's some important things to keep in mind in doing this process. As a recap, I work with tons of architects and designers and help them with their career journey through out of architecture. And through that experience, and also going through a career transition myself, and also going through the job search process and helping people along that way, there are things that just come up over and over and over again. So I really want to kind of just set those foundational things. And then from there, we can ask questions. And really, the goal here is just to set you up for success in finding and landing a job. The number one thing to keep in mind is, like right now, it can be a very challenging time. The market's very competitive. And what that means is what it took to get a job maybe a couple years ago requires a lot more today. And so that's just kind of the hard truth for a lot of these positions. I have something weird on my shirt. They are highly competitive. And the people that are hiring for these roles have very specific requirements that they can fill, so they can be more picky with the selection of their candidates. So some key things to kind of keep in mind here are, when you're going through this process, especially if you've been laid off or you've been looking for a job for a while, is you want to make sure to break up your day and be as strategic as possible with that job search. So it's very hard to not get overwhelmed with the amount of activities and things that you have to do. On top of that, you have the stress of not having a job or not knowing what is there for tomorrow. So there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of stress, and it can be really challenging. But you have to be strategic. The first step to being strategic about the job search is just spending an hour, 2 hours, and starting to write out how you're going to handle and design your career search process. And when you're writing that out, you have to take some things into consideration. Some of those things would include, I need to be able to break up my day into some core activities. And some of those would be prepping for an interview, refining your resume, sending out applications, and doing networking and content if applicable. What's challenging is, I'll just kind of give an example here, which is, let's say we had two people. We had Bob and Betty. Bob is off to the races. Bob is saying, I'm going to apply to 1,000 roles. They apply to 1,000 roles, and then they take the rest of the day off. They chill, they relax. I did a great job. I sent out 50 resumes, and I sent out 1,000 this week. Now, Betty in this case did not send out 1,000 resumes, maybe sent out a couple targeted roles. And in addition to that, they prepared for interviews, even though they did not have an interview. And they also identified skills in their resume and skill gaps of where they could skill up in the meantime. And they're working on those skills as well. And so, taking those two examples, you could probably see who would be more likely to land a job quicker. Betty's going to be more prepared when an interview does come up, and they're going to have a couple more skills to add to their resume as well. And they'll just be more prepared. Okay, so that is, I think that was the main item wanted to talk about. Was not so much, we can talk about the tactics in terms of resume, interviews, and preparation. But at the end of the day, there's a large and significant portion, which I think is really important, and that is actually designing what your day looks like, breaking up those tasks, and making sure that you're keeping everything fresh. The next topic I'd like to discuss as well is kind of the different stages of the application process. And so this can be helpful for identifying where you need more work. And so one of the key learnings that I found through this process and through helping and working with other people was asking and getting feedback from colleagues can be really helpful. So if you're having trouble, you're sending out a lot of resumes, but you're not getting any responses, that could be an indication that your resume needs work. Get feedback, ask industry experts. I would recommend not just to hire a resume expert to rewrite your resume. I would actually get feedback from multiple people in the industry that you're interested in applying for and get people that would be similar to the hiring managers that you're looking at. And in addition, getting additional support. In terms of the resume as well, if you're not getting responses, it also means that you may not be targeting the correct roles or being strategic in how you're thinking about which types of roles you should apply. So at first, you might apply to a lot of different types of roles. Some you might be more or less qualified for. But at some point, you need to really hone in on, okay, I'm going to focus on these types of roles, and that's going to hone the messaging of the resume and also help with the interview prep. It's very hard to not only do all these things, all these tasks in the job application process. That in itself is challenging when you set yourself up to then try to target, let's say, three different role titles. So maybe you're looking at like an architecture position, but maybe also a career transition role. Doing both those things at the same time will require a lot more time and investment. And then imagine if you add in two types of transitional roles, that adds like a lot more complexity. So my goal, especially my recommendation here is, especially in a competitive environment, you kind of have to hone in on what you're going to target and test it out. Target that for, let's say, a week, 2 weeks, a month, and just see what responses you will get. And if you're not getting any responses, then maybe shift that focus. It's kind of like testing a hypothesis. I have this hypothesis, test it, see what response you get, and then adjust as needed. All right, so chat, go ask any questions you have about career. It could be about resume, applying for jobs, any questions that are top of mind for you. Feel free to ask some questions in the chat. All right, so we have, how do I market myself during a job search? Great question. When it comes to marketing yourself, there's actually a book here. Let's see, Forever Employed. I really like this book because it has a great subtitle, which is really all you need to know about this book, which is How to Stop Looking for Work and Let Your Next Job Find You. And this goes to the concept of, if there's an area, if there is a topic that you are interested in or a niche, you can start creating writing content, visual content, and just putting it out there and getting your work out there and share your work with others. And so that's kind of the key concepts behind this idea of forever employable. And so that goes to marketing yourself, not just in the job search process, but then also putting content out there. And I'm not saying you have to be a content marketer per se. You don't have to be like a social media person, but at least go ahead and start writing about the things that you're interested in. So what are some tactics to reach out to people you don't have connections with? All right. So in terms of whoops, got some feedback there. Okay. So in terms of outreach, right now, so many people are getting spammed on LinkedIn. And so for the majority of people that are spamming other people on LinkedIn, they are typically asking for things. They're saying, can you connect me to this person? Can you let the hiring manager know that I applied for this job? And it's fine to do that. And in some cases, you just kind of have to, and that's just the environment that we're in. But keep in mind that a lot of people are out there doing outreach on LinkedIn, And you want to be mindful of how someone would read and interpret that message. And so, when making a connection, I always recommend not to spam a bunch of people with the exact same message, but have a targeted message if possible, and find ways to compliment them and their work and try to people will say this like how to add value, but you could share a link, you could share an article with them, you could find some kind of common thing, or you could just be impressed with something on their resume like, oh, it's really interesting that you went from architecture to this, like I'm really curious about learning more. So when it comes to tactics to reaching out to people, I highly recommend finding a common thread. Maybe it's the school, maybe it's an interesting thing in their job or something like that. And that will just make the connection feel a little bit more human and less, I'm just here trying to get information. Just a quick anecdotal story on the power of LinkedIn. Someone had reached out to me. Actually, no, someone posted something about how they were laid off and they were applying to a bunch of roles, not getting any responses. And connected with them because they were in a similar, working in a similar industry as myself. And through conversation, this wasn't planned, but through a couple of conversations, went on a phone call, discussed the industry, our challenges with finding a job. And then later on, that individual sent me their resume. It was actually a couple of months later, and they were still having trouble landing a job. And so I reached back out to them. I was like, hey, how's it going? Did you land something? They're like, no, I haven't landed anything. And I asked, like, what are your presentation materials? And they're like, I didn't even know I had to have presentation materials. So then they eventually put something together. I reviewed those materials, provided feedback for that individual. They incorporated, updated a whole new presentation, and then a couple weeks later, then they landed a position. And so that's just like a little way of how you can provide value to someone else. Now that person will work at a place, they'll probably remember, hey, that random dude, Nate, helped me on my resume or helped me on my portfolio or presentations. If something comes up, maybe something will align there. Again, I'm not doing those things for that particular reason, but that's just to increase, kind of have that giving mentality when it comes to making connections. You never know what's going to turn around. I wouldn't do it with the intention of getting something in return, but just have that giving mindset. And if, something comes back in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or never, that's completely fine. But that's just one way that you can start to connect with others. Ask for feedback on your materials, see common connections, and also look for people that are actively using LinkedIn. That's another little like hack and tactic for connecting with people. A lot of people just literally never go on LinkedIn. They don't use it like everyone else is using it that are looking for jobs. So see the people that are posting, you'll have a better chance of connecting with them. That was a little bit of a ramble, but any questions? Did that make sense on making a connection, tactics to reach out to people? High level takeaway, try to add value when you can, and you can do that in a couple of creative ways. So yeah, Mac, if you have any other questions, please just submit it in the chat. Oh, yes. Reaching out versus LinkedIn versus email. So LinkedIn is an amazing database that has so much rich information and data on people, companies, history. And so you can target people on LinkedIn that are going to fit. Let's say you're trying to find a job in a particular area or at a particular firm. You can then do the direct outreach and discover those people. If you have their email, that's great. There's a lot of people that don't use LinkedIn. They have a LinkedIn, they don't check LinkedIn very often. And so that's why I was like looking at that signal for, do they use LinkedIn? If you can show up to events, if you can network, if you can go to an office, especially if you're looking for an architecture job, that is going to be a much better way to build a connection with someone. And there's going to be, just depending on personalities, some people will help you more than others. I've had some people that like really went out of their way to try to help me, and other people that like they're busy, they have other things going on, they don't have the time to like call other people on my behalf and get them on the phone and make a connection for me. So that's yeah, if you can reach out in person, and if you have their email, I would definitely do that. I know in architecture email is still used pretty regularly, so that will be a much easier way to get a response than LinkedIn. Any follow-up questions or things that I didn't cover on making a connection and networking? As you probably have heard, all the advice around career, it's like networking, networking, networking. Lean into your network. A lot of times people think, I'm just going to grab a drink here. A lot of times people think that like I don't have a network, especially if I don't have a job or don't have a long work history. Maybe I don't have a really big network. Um, you probably have friends and family members. You can let them know, hey, I'm looking for a job, and you want to be clear what types of roles you're looking for. And so when you're reaching out to those people, as clear as you can be, like, I'm looking for an architect role and ideally in this industry, or I'm looking to career transition in product management or project management outside of an architecture firm. So the more clear you can be, it helps with that connection and outreach as well. And a great way uh, is, I think I already mentioned this, but is getting feedback is kind of like a little bit of a sneaky way, say sneaky way to get a connection. I'm just gonna mute myself. All right. And yeah, I think I mentioned this as well, but just offering insights, articles, helpful resources to people, finding things that they're interested in. Again, you might share something and never hear back. And you also want to think about it as it can be a little bit of a Ponzi scheme. So you kind of find one person to try to connect you to another person. I know people have reached out to me and said, hey, can you connect me to so and so? And then they're going to so and so and like, hey, can you connect me to some other people? Or do you have any other people in mind? And that way you can just continue having conversations. In those conversations, you're not what you're trying, there's certain goals that you want to get out of those, like quote unquote networking conversations. Uh, I would recommend try getting feedback because these people, especially if they're peers, they might not help you get a job, to be honest, but they will help you get feedback on your materials, and that will directly help you. And you just need to look at that user journey of the entire um, application journey and say, where am I getting hung up? Is it after the phone? Is it I'm not getting any responses? Is it I'm not getting a phone call? Or is the interview drop after the screener interview? Or is it dropping in the first round of interviews or late in the process? And so once you can identify where in the process things are going wrong or seem to go off track, like really like double down on those items. And that's why it's hard, but that continuous prep of interview prep and all that is really helpful. And then, yeah, chat. Any other questions? Okay, what to prepare for when? Oh, we got one more question. What should be the first message to send a possible employer to get their attention? Did the feedback message thing, but it has not worked out for me. Yeah, so I'm curious what medium you're using, because they might not use that platform. So we mentioned, like, okay, is it LinkedIn or email? Maybe they don't go on that platform. Um, Again, right now people are really busy, and when a job is posted on LinkedIn, thank you. And when a job is posted, thousands of applicants are applying to that job. And so that's why, like, when you do get a response, when you do get an interview in a challenging job market, you have to go all in. And so that's where it's like this reaching out and networking. Um, you're just trying to see what sticks, and you might not get a response, and you kind of have to just do do more. There's not really like a better or nicer way to say it. Um, in terms of getting attention, this is where some of the ideas for like forever employable, which is start putting your work out there, start putting out your process, start um, thinking about showcasing a portfolio example and giving some thoughts on it. Have a point of view around the work that you did on a certain project. Start sharing articles. So that could be one way to get noticed, is starting to share content and messaging. And then first message to send a possible employer. And then the other, yeah. So that's the other. I did the feedback. Yeah. How does that sound though? You might not always get a response. Reach out to more people. Start posting as much work as you can, and things will start to click and come back. Also, when you're saying send a possible employer, is that the someone who works there? Is that a hiring manager? Is that the boss? Is the place that you're targeting, or is it a small firm, a large firm, a medium firm? So I would look at their company page. Like, if it's a smaller-ish firm, you might be able to get in contact with the principal. If it's a larger firm, you might be able to get in contact with someone who's actively posting on LinkedIn. So I would start to target and find those people. As many peers as you can be a good way to, if you're not getting a response from someone of a higher level, I would try to find someone at a lower level to just get an initial conversation and get an understanding of, um, are you hiring? Is it competitive? Like, do you have any recommendations? Again, keep in mind, a lot of people are reaching out, and that's part of this, like, challenging environment. Again, if the first blocker is not getting a response from sending applications, it send out your resume to 10 people and get feedback. Talk to a career advisor and get feedback on your resume. Like, improve your resume. That's the document that they're looking at, for better or for worse. Go back and repolish up your portfolio. So yeah, I hope that helps. I know it's not easy. That's kind of like, it's not for the faint of heart, and it takes a lot of work. And so I have a lot of empathy. It's not an easy situation. Any follow-up questions to that? Let me know if that made sense. Oh, for an entry level role. Um, so for an entry level role, my best recommendation would be to do, and you might have already been doing this, but start looking at a list of all the firms in your area And that would include like mom and pop design build residential firms to like just start collecting a list and tracking your outreach and follow up as closely as you can. Through that process, I would do, um, and I know that this is not the most efficient way, but I would start calling up these firms directly. Um, if you're, and then this is more for an entry level role, start calling up those firms directly and seeing if you can get a conversation with someone. And especially at a smaller role, at a smaller firm, there could be like a part-time position, and that could be a way just to gain some experience while you're still looking for a full-time role. um, it's always harder to, I don't know what exactly your, I can just go on LinkedIn and look at your work history, but it's going to be a little bit harder to get a response from a very large firm like Gensler. Just be like, let's just say Gensler, for example, it might be a little bit harder to get a response, or you're going to need materials that are really going to stand out. Um, know that like a lot of job postings are not actively looking for roles to fill, and they might already have someone. It might be an expired job posting. That's why I created Arc Jobs, was because we need the most recent job posting. So um, sorry, going back to my like initial thought here though, which is the direct outreach. There are a lot of firms that are smaller or opening up new offices in new locations that may not have the experience of like posting a job and doing that in an efficient way. And so I've seen even here locally in Atlanta, a firm like they're opening up their offices in Atlanta, but they hadn't gone through that process of like how to like recruit and find architects in the area. And so that's a case where it's like, if you reach out to your network and people that you know, that's where it's like, oh, hey, so and so is hiring. They haven't even had a job opening yet. And then you can have you can call them up, have a conversation and say, hey, George, like so and so said that you're hiring, like, or that you might be hiring for a position soon, like would love to have a conversation, talk about my skills. um and going back to the like Mac, one of the most challenging things here is breaking up your day. So you not only have to, it's not an easy task, so you not only have to be doing this the direct outreach and time boxing that within your, but I would time box that within your day. So spend a specific amount of time doing this direct outreach, but then also finding opportunities in your own experience and any gaps that you're seeing and skilling up in those areas. And so it might be getting better at Revit, it might be getting some contracting experience, doing a CAD job or doing like a BIM or CAD job for a residential builder or a developer, for instance. They'll have CAD roles as well. So I'd also look for like literally search CAD roles, and you might, which you might have already done, but that's just an additional idea. All right, sorry, rambled on that one. Do you have any follow-up questions or additional questions on that one? I guess my question to you is, and the chat, how many are you just not getting any responses? Like you're sending in hundreds and hundreds of resumes, but you're not getting responses. That, I guess, would be my question to the chat. And I'm gonna drink some water here. Oh, nice. You're like Betty. That's awesome. Yeah, it's not easy. It takes time to learn how to be Betty, but especially the interview part, because you want to be fresh for interviews and get, yeah, and just be like find a way to get an interviewer for someone to interview you so you can stay fresh on the interview skills. Um, and like stay with it, be persistent. You're going to get something. I'm 100%. This is 75 firms in Portland. I'd say I've had a lot of great connections, but the job, um, I have a running list of 75 firms to be firms in the Portland area. I'd say I've made a lot of great connections, but the job seems to be dry. The job well seems to be dry. Yeah, it's amazing. I met some amazing people through LinkedIn over the years and just like random connections that I'm really fortunate to have. So that is one added benefit. And it's also a time where you learn a lot of new things as well. Um, if there is any contract work that you can do on the side, any, uh, yeah, contract work, part-time work, look at, um, I'm wondering, you said 75 firms, so I'm wondering if you've included arch not just architecture firms, but also builders and developers for CAD roles. And um, you could also potentially yeah, look out for contract work as well. Nope, just architecture firms. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of, I know it was a little bit of a vague concept, which was like you have a thesis, you test it out, and then you maybe develop a new thesis and you test that out. So that would be a potential recommendation for me or for you would be, um, still look for some of those roles. Maybe something will open up soon. You know, I know, especially in Portland, I know there was a couple firms that had some pretty uh, big layoffs, but yeah, I would just like still, yeah, maybe look at some of those like tangential opportunities. There could be an opportunity there for either like a CAD role or even like interior design. And then also putting together additional examples of your work and getting all that stuff out there. Any follow-up questions to that? What other topics I have here? Let's see, interviews. How do you manage rejection? Strategic tips to break into a new industry. Any additional topics we want to cover before we wrap up for tonight? Going once, going twice. All right. So I think I am going to do a follow-up event next week. I'm going to try to get the tech working. I did not do that correctly. So thanks for jumping over to YouTube and a different platform and for joining me. Strategic topics to break into different industries. Yeah, so this is one of the topics that I love. I worked in architecture for a number of years, and now I actually work as a UX researcher, and then also have this project with ArcJobs and a career advisor at Out of Architecture. So when it comes to breaking into different industries, especially in a challenging market, there's a couple things that you want to take into consideration. The first one is, and this is probably stuff that you've heard multiple times, but I'm kind of just like reiterating it, which is looking at the crossover industries. And so we think that you went to school for architecture, you have to work at an architecture firm. That's a bit like saying I studied, I don't know, I studied biology. That means I have to work in a biology lab. And so the biggest thing here is that basic think about all the things that have overlap with space, like design, space, and the built environment. And through that lens, you can really start to see a lot of crossover and a lot of crossover um, opportunities. So when it comes to it, and this also kind of relates back to what I like to call the career dials, which is what are the things that are important to you? Is it finance? I mean, finances is always a consideration, career happiness, ownership. There's a list of different career dials you can kind of um, do trade-offs, do all better in some cases, which is the best case scenario. But um, in terms of um, some easy things to target would be interior design. Um, Again, it would depend on like what your goals are, but like it could be an interior based design role that starts to open up a lot of different opportunities. Um, I won't go into the pumpkin story, but yeah, so the like maybe interior design roles, there's a lot of roles within that category of interior design that could range from workplace strategy, that could be planning and real estate. It could be a lot of different things in that interior design bucket. You could do something like look at the industries that are doing really well right now. So data centers, that could be a potential like market to look at and see how you could get into that. So that's data centers. There's a lot of like data center projects that need CAD people to do drawings. Same with like warehouses as well. A lot of times they need people to do CAD drawings for that. So that's my initial recommendation is like look for those just those tangential jobs. If you want to jump into a completely different role like a UX researcher or a product manager or a product designer, it's going to take taking a course, getting some example projects, and start publishing and sharing those projects. The first thing that I would do is I would just go on some job boards and just look at what are the most common jobs that are being posted to start to get an understanding of what are people hiring for right now, what are the types of roles, and what are the skills required. And you could look at those and say, like, I'm seeing like a bunch of data analyst roles. Like, what's going on with that? Like, maybe I want to learn a little bit more about that. I've been kind of interested in um, analytics before, or maybe it's like a business intelligence role. So that's another thing you can do is just look at what are the roles that are people hiring for and the skills that are needed for that, and then start skilling up in those areas. Um, yeah. And it also depends on where you're at in your career. So if it's earlier, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if it's earlier on in your career, it could change. I'm trying to for assistant project manager or project engineer roles, but I've been getting unlucky in those roles as well. Do you know what field you're applying in? Like, is it robotics or and when you're saying rejected, are you not getting responses from your resumes as well? Project engineer, project assistant project manager, or project engineer roles. Oh, are you located in Durham? Okay, so if you're construction. Oh, that's a great, yeah, that'd be great to target. Yeah. Yeah, my best recommendation, especially since you're in the research triangle, and maybe you're already doing this, you're probably already doing this, which is like start connecting with some of the people at AIA. Um, Great, like just start connecting with them, going to any event that they have. They were pretty active when I was over there, but yeah, it can be always a nice opportunity to get involved with your local chapter. Well, it's good that you got a call for an interview. Yeah, project engineer role. Yeah, again, it's like a lot of positions are very, people can be more selective at the moment. And so, yeah, that's where it gets a little bit more challenging. I would say if you've, let's see, I'll take a quick look here. 2023 build sense. So, I mean, this is the other thing. This is the unpopular advice right here, which is at some point you need money. You need at some point you need to like make ends meet. I don't know or project anyone's like financial situation, but at some point you need to make ends meet. At some point you need to get something going or something moving. And so, in the case of I've been applying for roles for the last 6 months, I've improved my resume. I've got, so there's things that you can kind of keep going through the slog, and it can get exhausting. At some point, you may want to look for um, different types of roles that are quote unquote, yeah, I would just look for roles that are maybe more supportive. So it could be helping out on the work site. It could be an end, like literally like a job building help, like helping in construct, like doing the construction itself. When I was in the research triangle, I literally, and maybe after this stream, I'll send you some contact info, people to reach out to. When I was in the research triangle, I would show up to a job site at the end of the day. This is when I was in school, and I would just clean the job site. And the carpenters had went home for the day. I literally just showed up, cleaned the entire job site, and that was all I did. And so again, it's like that job wasn't posted, but I called my friend up and was like, "Hey, I kind of need like a side job. Like, do you have any like do you have any ideas?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm working on this site. I really could use someone to like clean up, and if you're up for doing it, that would be amazing." So yeah, uh, finding sometimes those support roles. I've also seen people get like try to get even like a reception job at an architecture firm, a marketing position in an architecture firm. Like look for those supportive roles that could then help you build skills towards the types of jobs that you're looking for. And you'll be surprised with, especially with some direct outreach, you might start getting more responses. And I think but as we wrap up, like one of the hardest things is just to like to keep going, but something is going to click. I know it doesn't feel that way. Something will click. Someone will pick up, will answer that phone. Something will connect. It's just a matter of staying persistent and continuing the process and being kind to yourself, as kind as you can to yourself in the process. Yes, it's a challenging time, and you kind of just have to roll with it. Something's going to line up, and you're going to find a really good opportunity. I'm 100% sure of that. All right. So, any last questions, comments? We have a couple more minutes to go. All right. Well, I hope this session was helpful. I'm hoping next time we can get other people on video or other people talking and responding, so it can be a little bit more interactive. And maybe that just means sending out a Zoom event. That might be the easiest way to do things. But I do thank you, appreciate for spending time here. And I hope that the Art Jobs LinkedIn page has been helpful. If you can apply to a job really quickly. I know this process sucks, but I believe in you and you can do it. And I hope our jobs has been helpful. Our definition of success is if one person sees a job on our jobs, they apply and they land a position, that is going to be our definition of success. We that so I'm waiting for that day. I haven't heard it yet because we just launched a little bit ago, but that's our end goal, is to make sure that you can see all the opportunities and the ones that are most recent, because you're gonna have your best chances the faster you apply. All right. Thanks for joining. You all are awesome. Thanks, chat, for all the comments and questions. And I'll send something out for next week. We'll do another event. Awesome. Have a good night.